This is Andrew Slayball coming to you from the Fire and Ice podcast. Um, I am out here early this morning and I am making some brisket, smoking a whole bunch of brisket. And I got up at about, I think it was 2:30 this morning and came over here and got the smoker all set up and got the brisket all ready and put it on the smoker. So we are currently on a 7.5 hour cold smoke cycle or warm smoke. I mean, the smoker gets to 100 degrees, but we're going to have oh, 40 pounds, roughly 40 pounds of brisket ready tonight for dinner. We're going to feed a bunch of men. Anyway, I decided I am going to make me a coffee. Uh, Another one. I already had a couple, but I decided to tell you a story. And so I went and got me a coffee, and my favorite cup says, "Let's go, we're burning daylight." One of my favorite quotes from the great philosopher John Wayne. Anyway, it's story time, and yeah, I'm going to tell you a story, something that happened years ago that still to this day affects my life. And I really enjoy telling stories anyway. So I figured, you know what? I need to share that. Maybe that helps somebody, maybe encourage somebody. Um, as many of you know, I grew up as a Amish kid. I grew up on an Amish farm in an Amish community. And when I was 19, just turned 19, there's a whole story behind that. But anyway, I ended up leaving the Amish community and the Amish church, my Amish family. I was the oldest of 10 kids, originally 12, but now 10. Um, but I chose to leave everything because, yeah, I had a hard time living that way for a lot of reasons. But that's a story for another day. That's not the story I want to tell today. But when I was 19, I left and I had $60 in my pocket, $60 cash. I had no bank account. I had no ID. I had no social security number. In fact, I didn't even have my birth certificate because my dad had it and wouldn't give it to me. So um, I ended up, there were some very nice people that helped me. And I ended up getting a copy of my birth certificate, and I needed two forms of ID in order to get a social security number. Well, I had my birth certificate, and I was like, I don't have any other form of ID. And so they asked me if I ever been in a hospital. I said, yeah. I'd broken my leg when I was 16. So they said, well, if you can get the hospital records with your parents' signatures on them from when you were there, that'll serve as ID. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. So we went down to OSU, down in Columbus, Ohio, and sure enough, they gave it to me. And so I finally got my social security number and then my driver's license. And soon after that, about 6 months or so, yeah, roughly 6 months after I left home, I decided I'm going to move. I wanted to move away from the area I was in. I just kind of wanted to I wanted to go explore. I wanted to do something different. Up until that point in my life, I hadn't traveled except to go from Ohio to Michigan a couple times. I think twice. Yeah, I was in Michigan twice in my life by the time I was 19. That's as far as I ever traveled. Um, so I wanted to travel. I wanted to see different things, and I decided a friend of mine had moved to Arkansas, And I decided I was going to move out there too. And I was going to go get a job. At that time in my life, I wasn't doing construction as much as I was horse training. I grew up training horses and I really enjoyed it. And so when I moved out to Arkansas, um, again, I had almost no money. Um, I was living in, I had been working part time at a stables in Ohio at that point until I moved. And then when I moved, I needed a job, but I knew what I wanted. And I started looking into classifieds when I moved and started looking for a job. And one day I see this job posting, and it was exactly what I wanted. It was on this farm, and they had show horses, and they needed someone to clean stalls, exercise horses, work with young horses, stuff like that. And I'm like, that is exactly what I want. And so I I called him and I set up an interview. And I go over there. I meet him. I think it was Thursday afternoon when I met him. Yeah, pretty sure it was a Thursday afternoon. And I went over there and I talked to him. And I'm gonna, I think I could give their names. Scott and Elizabeth were their names. Scott was the father, Elizabeth was the daughter. She was the one that was working with the show horses, and they had hunters and jumpers, and they had some. But we're wanting to get into more some of the Western or style horses with the uh, like cutting horses, reining horses, that type of thing too. So anyway, long story short, I go over there and I have an interview with them in their office, and they ask me about where I'm from, what I'm doing here, and what am I trying to do here, and so I just told them I'd never had an interview in my life. Like the job I had in Ohio was w- people that I know, and they were just like, "Yeah, come work for us." Uh, so I'd never sat through an interview before, and I had no idea how to do it. I just showed up and just told them the truth, and they they kind of gave me the "we'll call you" routine after we were done, and they said, "Yeah, they'll call me once they decide on something." And in that moment, I did something that to this day, I often wonder where I got the idea from because nobody ever taught me to do this. But I do believe that God was directing me even then, even though I didn't know it. I believed in God, or I believed there was a God, but I didn't believe He cared about me, especially not enough to tell me what to do, other than be a buzzkill, make sure I don't have any fun in life. That's what I thought at that time. So it never occurred to me that God told me to do this until years later. But as I was getting ready to leave, I had this thought because I really wanted this job. I thought, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Like this is perfect. This is exactly what I'm looking for. The job was paying 15.50 an hour, I believe, is what they were paying. And so I turned, when I stood up to leave, I looked at Scott and I said, listen, I understand that you want to interview other people, you want to look at your options, um, but I really want to work for you. And here's what I'll do. I said, I will work for you for a week at no charge, no cost to you whatsoever. I will work for you. And if I am not the person that you need for this job, if this doesn't work out, this is not gonna fly. Um, no problem. I'll leave. You owe me absolutely nothing. I will do this for free for a week. If you just give me an opportunity to show you that not only can I do the job, I'm the perfect guy for the job. And this point, that I didn't have, I I wasn't sure if I had enough money to make it to work the whole next week as far as fuel went. And I didn't. I certainly wasn't going to be eating steak. I didn't. I was out of money. And I had zero plan Bs. This was the only option that I saw. And I wasn't going to let that opportunity just slip away without fighting for it. And I put my tail so far out on the line. And I decided that I'm going to offer that. And he looks at Elizabeth for a minute, and he goes, deal. They'll take that deal. Um, Asked if I can start Monday. I said, yes, I can start Monday. And so Monday morning, they didn't live on the farm. And Monday morning, I was at the gate. They have an automatic gate to get in and out. I didn't have the code to get in, but I was supposed to be there. I believe it was like 8:30 or 9. I was supposed to be there. Might have been earlier. I don't know. Whatever time I was supposed to be there, I was there early. I think I showed up like 15, 20 minutes early, like I was going to be there. And so I'm sitting at the gate when they pull up. Um, so they pull up. I'm already sitting there. They open the gate. We go in. And I could tell that they liked I was early. Which, by the way, if you're a business owner or an employee or you have no job at all and you're looking for one, that is a lesson I've learned in life. Don't ever be late if you don't absolutely have to. And if you're going to be late, you'll know you're going to be late. 99.9% of the time, you know if you're not going to make it on time that you agreed on. Call the people. Let them know. To this day, I do that. If I'm going to be 1 minute later than what I had told the customer that I'm going to be there, I call them. Tell them, hey, listen, this is the situation, and I'm going to be late. And then I give them the new time. If I'm going to be a minute late, I tell them I'm going to be 5 minutes late. That way I give myself a little bit of room and an opportunity to show up early again. And don't ever be late because that is, people perceive that as disrespectful. It's disrespectful of the other person's time. Um, it's just, yeah, like I said, whether you're a business owner, employee, it doesn't matter. Show up on time. If you're going to church, show up on time. And in fact, 5 minutes early is on time, and 10 minutes early is just a little bit early. Because by the time you park, get out of your vehicle, walk inside, you're on time. Uh, just something I'm going to put out there. That's always something that's stuck with me for years. Early on, I got that concept, and I've never let it go. Um, but anyway, I show up and we get started that Monday morning, and they show me around. Um, they show me what they want me to do, how to clean the stalls, how they want them cleaned, how to feed the horses, water the horses, turn the horses out, bring them back in, and just kind of give me the general overview of what they wanted me to do. And so um, that's what I did. And in that, I think it was the second day. I want to say it was Tuesday. it was either Monday or Tuesday, the first or second day. Um, they wanted to know, Elizabeth wanted to know if I know what I'm talking about because talk is cheap in the horse world. You can tell people anything you want to tell them about um, being able to ride a horse, being able to work with a horse, being able to ride a horse properly, being able to work with a horse and actually work with them, or bullying a horse or beating a horse. All of those things are different. And there's a million people that'll tell you they can do those things. The talk is very cheap in that environment. I'm just telling you that. And I knew that, and they knew that, and so they wanted to know what I can do. And so, which I'd been riding horses for years at that point, starting 2 year olds, and I'd been bucked off. I mean, the reason I'd been in the hospital is one fell on my leg, broke my leg. I had broken my arm at that point. I'd been thrown into round pens and thrown over the top of the round pen and yeah, run over. And I was, I had experience in all the stupid stuff, let's put it that way. And I had learned a few things. And so I was happy. I was happy to show them. I was excited about it. And they bring out this horse called Mickey, and there's this big outdoor arena. Now, Minky, if you think about a cartoon horse, uh, the long, gangly legs, she was a woman, and she was this long-legged. She was a hunter bred horse. And if you don't know what a hunter is, it is these horses are bred to jump. They're not the fast jumpers. Those are the um, shoot, what are they called now? Jumpers, I think. Yeah. Anyway, is there's more class and style with the hunters. There's more showmanship involved in it. But anyway, they're beautiful horses, and I believe Minky was a 3 year old, and Minky had a bad habit. Minky was lazy, and she was just this goofy little mare, and they were they had bought her, and the problem they were having is she would do just fine under saddle to walk her around, maybe even trot. But if you took her out of the arena in the sand and they had poles laying on the ground, if you ever driven past some of these outdoor arenas, you'll see these poles laying on the ground. Well, those are set out specifically to teach horses how to lift their feet, how to jump or step over them. And so she was in the beginning stages of this training, and she would do just fine at a walk. Sometimes she'd do just fine at a trot. But as soon as you asked her to go into a lope, Minky, being lazy, figured out a little trick. She figured out if you start crow hopping and bucking, which she is too long legged and clumsy and gangly to do any hard bucking, but she was tall enough to intimidate, and also they were riding her with an English saddle, which means there's no horn, there's no deep seat to hang on with, and your knees are tucked up a little bit, and yeah, it's a little bit more difficult to ride in one of those in a Western saddle, and I'd never ridden in an English saddle. And so I'm thinking, oh boy, what did I get myself into here? Because they wouldn't put a Western saddle on a horse. And because they weren't going to get her used to that. She had to get used to the English saddle, and whoever was going to ride her was going to ride her that way too. And so she would go into this crow hopping and she'd buck off whoever was riding her. Or make, at the very minimum, they'd make her stop, you know. And so she got out of work. She didn't have to run in the sand. And she was smart. You can't blame her. She was thinking. She thought this through. And so we uh, we get we get her out in the arena, and I do some groundwork with her, and just kind of familiarizing myself with Minky, get to know her a little bit. And finally I get up on her and I walked her around, walked her over the poles, and I even trotted her a little bit. And sure enough, Minky did exactly what Minky, excuse me, what Minky had done before. She, I got her going in a lope, and we went around the end of the arena and came over, and I think we hit, there was like one pole on the ground, and just a small hop to jump over the pole, and Minky goes to Bucky. And guess who had never ridden in an English saddle? I was perched on top of this big, clumsy horse, and guess who fell off? Right in front of people I was trying to impress. Uh, yeah, I had to eat a little bit of humble pie on that one. It didn't hurt hitting the sand, but it kind of bruised my ego. And Minky, of course, ran down the other end of the arena and stood there and took a nice little breather, took a nice break. And I gathered myself up out of the sand and brushed myself off, and pretty sure I was probably blushing at that point because Elizabeth was standing there watching the whole thing. And of course, she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine." Of course, I mean, I could have had a broken leg, and I wouldn't have admitted that anything was wrong at that point. And and so I got up, dusted myself off, and I said, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm good." And and so I walked down to the other end of the arena, and Minky, she just stood there. And so I went down and got her, and I brought her back. I did some more groundwork with her, and over by the gate on where the side of the arena, the corner of the arena where the gate was, there was this little like hanging thing. This thing where he hung up. They had some whips and stuff, and there was a riding crop. And if you don't know what a riding crop is, it's about 2 feet long, maybe. It's a little riding whip. It has a handle on one end with a loop that goes around your hand, and on the other end, it has a little wide piece of leather that wide, about that long. And it makes a nice little pop when you pop somebody. It doesn't really hurt, but it's a nice, if you watch the Kentucky Derby or horse racing, you'll see the riders have those. You hold it like this and it sticks out the back and you pop them on the butt if you need to. And so I asked Elizabeth, I said, "Hey, could I have one? Hey, could I have that little whip, that little riding crop?" She kind of looked at me like she thought I was going to beat the crap out of her horse. I said, "No, no." I said, I'd like to have that if you don't mind." She said, "Sure." She went and got it for me. And I had Minky, and so I get back on the saddle, on top of the horse, and and I did the same routine. We kind of walked around, we trotted around a little bit, and then I got her going again. And of course, Minky was going to do the same thing. Minky's mind hadn't changed at all, or her evil intentions of getting out of work. And so Minky starts in with the same thing again. Well, what Minky did not know is I had been watching some Clinton Anderson training DVDs. And so when I've been doing the groundwork, I had figured out she had a fairly soft mouth, like I could pull her head to the side. So I was ready for her the second time. She went to start bucking. I reached down and I pulled her nose back and I took that whip and I started popping her on the butt, and I probably hit her, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, just really smacked her good. And of course, this scared the daylights out of this horse. And she wasn't used to that happening. And no shade against anybody. She figured out how to get away with it. And so she went in circles. We went in circles a few times, sand flying, and I let her go. And we tried it again. And the second time she almost did, and I popped her one, like she acted like she was going to, and I popped her again, and Minky takes off running. I mean, down the arena, around the end, and I was just along for the ride. I'm perched up there on top of this English saddle, going at a full gallop for the first time in my life in a saddle like that, on a horse that tall. And I did a couple of laps with her, and she slowed down, and we trotted, we walked, we went back into a lope. Mickey didn't do that again. And all she needed was just to figure out it was less work to just do what I asked her to do instead of getting her butt whipped. And so, anyway, Elizabeth thought it was some. I actually ended up making a good impression. And the fact that I got thrown off and didn't quit or proceed to kill the horse um, was impressive. I guess that was something they were looking for. And so she was impressed. Actually, we had a good laugh afterwards because she wasn't sure if it was okay to laugh about it at first when I hit the dirt. Which, if you've never watched anybody hit the dirt, you usually wait to laugh until you know nothing's broken or seriously hurt, and then you laugh. Anyway, so yeah, then my job was to ride Miki several times a week and keep the kinks out of her and start her training to become a jumping horse. And over that week, yeah, she was. I think she was the only horse I rode. Other than that, I was cleaning stalls and working around the farm. They were baling hay, and I helped bale hay, stack hay. I was the guy that got stuck on the wagon. There was one of those kicker balers that the bales went flying, and I was the guy in the back catching them and stacking them and sweating like a dog back there. But anyway, it was all good. I had a job, and I had my dream job. I was working outside, I was working on a farm, and I was getting to work with horses. And I believe it was Thursday morning. Yeah, it was Thursday morning. Scott was there when I showed up, and Scott asked me to come in the office, and he said, "Hey, we decided we want to hire you." And they hired me right on the spot, and they gave me more money than what they had advertised that the job paid. They paid me more money. I had full health benefits, and he paid me for that week. And so I didn't have to go hungry or ride a bike to get to work. I had fuel money because they paid me. In fact, he paid me in advance, gave me an advance on that because I think he kind of figured out I was in a pinch. Anyway, I got more than I bargained for. And I think the point of the story, the thing that I always think about when I think about this story, when I think back on this, is how far out am I willing to go and how big of a risk am I willing to take if there is something that I really feel called to, if there's something I'm really sure that I want, like I am sure this is the direction that I'm going. How many times do I, to this day, do I make excuses for why it doesn't work? Maybe go halfway, maybe have a plan B, C, D, E, and F in place in case the first plan doesn't work out? Or do I go through my life and do I play to win with plan A? I mean, there's nothing wrong with a plan B and a plan C. There's nothing wrong with that. But how many times do I back off? Oh, well, I went and had the interview. They did seem interested, so I'm just kind of a little victim about it. Maybe they'll call me, maybe they'll not, maybe they won't. I don't know. Uh, I want my control, right? I can't control that. Yet, by this story, I can always look back on this story and see I actually do have some control over it. I do have some say on it. And one of the reasons that we all have a say in our life is because we were made in the image of God. God is a creator. We can create opportunities based on our attitude and our behavior. And stepping out in faith is a huge part of that. In fact, this is a scripture I was reading this morning in Hebrews 11, verse 6. Um, is talk about faith and action, talking about faith and action. Actually, I'm going to read more than just 6. Starting in verse 1, Hebrews 11. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous, when God spoke well of his offerings. And by faith, Abel still speaks, even though he is dead. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life, so he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. And it goes on talking about Abraham and Sarah and their child. And I know this is talking about a little bit different context of faith, yet it still applies to the story. Because I acted out in faith and I never read this. I didn't know this. And now I know why. That's because God was already working in my life. In fact, I can go way back and see God had his hand in my life in many ways. I had no idea. I didn't know. I didn't know I was made in the image of a creator. I didn't know I was sent to earth with a mandate to bring the kingdom of heaven here. I didn't know that. Yet it was in my DNA already. It was already in me. It was put in me. And God was already working in my life in that time, and I didn't even know it yet. I was still acting in faith. I engaged something by making the statement that I will work for you for a week. I will put everything up. Dude, if they hadn't hired me, if they had after a week said, hey, thank you very much, we appreciate it, but no, you ain't the God. I had no plan for that. I had no money. I didn't know what I was going to do. But because I put it I went all in. I left nothing left on the table. I was going to hitchhike to that job for that week if I had to for free in order to prove that I'm willing to show up. If there's an opportunity, I'm willing to show up. And so that is my question to you. How far are you willing to go in order to meet an opportunity? How often do you make excuses that keep you from meeting that opportunity? How often do I do that? How often do I actually live by faith and go all out, leave nothing on the table, throw everything at the opportunity and go for it? How different would our lives look if we would do that instead of holding back? We think it's really smart to hold back. Well, sometimes maybe it is. Um, but how often do we overlook stepping out in faith and giving everything, leaving nothing left on the table, leaving nothing left for excuses? Get rid of all excuses. Just go. And how often would God reward us in ways we can't even dream of if we did that, if we lived our life that way? Anyway, that is my story. And that is a story that still inspires me. Like I'm sitting here and it inspires me talking about this to you. Um, it excites me. I can think of a few opportunities that I am making excuses on right now. Um, Maybe it's due to procrastination. Maybe it's because I'm afraid it won't work out. Maybe it's because I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm afraid of the unknown. Whatever it is, I choose to step in faith and go all out for wherever God leads me. And I hope you choose to do the same. Thank you, and God bless you.